Welcome in, folks, to this week's episode of What's Bruin, brought to you by our friends over at Ice Shaker. Check them out at iceshaker.com. Get your own kitchen-grade stainless steel shaker bottle with your own custom logo, or get one with a Bruins logo on it. Again, check them out at iceshaker.com. Welcome in, as I said, and Dom, how you doing today?
Doing good. It's
Good.
the last show before trade deadline, so here we
Yeah,
are.
here we are, and what a crappy game today.
Yep,
Just
totally.
dull, boring, all the things that you don't want to see before an exciting time. But
But you know what? If they're going to win a hockey game, that's exactly how they have to play.
yep, New York Islanders style. But anyway, we had some excitement coming into the game though. Roster excitement coming into this weekend. Had a couple call ups, couple send downs. But working backward, obviously today we didn't have Brad Marchand coming into the game. Took a rough hit going into the boards yesterday.
Fabian Lysell just scored, by the way.
Oh, Providence going up before the end of the third. Gotta love it when you see that. But yes, what was your thoughts on the Brad Marchand hit yesterday that kept him out of today's game?
I'm going to get hated for this because a lot of the internet thinks that that was a penalty. That's not a penalty. Not in my mind. Not even close. Um, I feel for Brad. Obviously, don't want to see anybody ever get hurt. Those things happen.
I saw at best a trip because I forget whose stick it was, got in between Marchand's legs, kind of kicked out his left leg. At best, it was a trip. But as far as the hit itself, just a very unfortunate positional timing. And like you said, you want the best for Brad. It just those things happen when you have over 1,000 hits going in a year. Sometimes some of
Yeah,
them are just bad timing.
I don't even think it was on a trip. He was already on his way down.
Which is
I
also
t-
a fair. Like I said, at best it was a tripping call.
yeah,
Um, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't egregious. It was just a freak thing. Hopefully, Brad Marchand's okay. We're supposed to get more information tomorrow when they get back to Boston. Um, it does say something though that he was held out of the game today. Um, I mean, obviously, you want to make sure long term. It looked like he hit his head to me.
hold on, hold on. They probably held him out, and I'm being sarcastic here, for precautionary reasons until they get back to Boston and see their own doctors. The last thing they want is
Yeah, no kidding.
Minnesota doctor seeing them.
Yeah, no kidding. But in general, yeah, you. But the fact that he wasn't flown straight home yesterday, and he made the trip to Minnesota, leads me to believe that it's likely not terrible. They just
Yeah.
want to get extra, like you said, they want to be extra precautious at this point. A win today against Minnesota wouldn't have meant a whole lot for the standings in the grand scheme of things. And it gave you a chance to look at Georgi Merkulov on that second line with Coyle and Lindholm. What did you think of his play today? What did you think of him yesterday filling in on that third line next to Poitras?
I thought he was better yesterday. Um, Unfortunately for the kid, once Marchand went down, he was moved up and down, so he never really got comfortable with steady teammates. He, I don't think he was as good today, but um, what I'm happy to take out of it is that positionally, he looked good defensively or on the defensive side of the puck. Was in position when he had to be, um, and really nothing stands out on the bad side, on the defensive side of the game. And those are issues that he needed to work on in Providence. That's why he was there for so long. So there's a positive to take out of it.
Yeah, it's on the second line. He looked out of his element, just over his head. On the third line, playing with Pacha, playing with I think it was Brezzo on the other side, that he looked in better place. That's where he looked like you could get better matchups. And then, like you said, the injury to Marchand kind of jumbled him all around. Kevin says that Marchand's being held out because management needs to protect the potential trade piece. John says that the Bruins are unwatchable. I mean, for some, I can see that. But Dom, you and I like to torture ourselves. We're going to watch this team no matter what because we're going to be here to talk about it.
Well,
so
I don't want to describe it as unwatchable, but then again, I've said it a million times. I don't watch hockey games like most people watch hockey games. I'm there to watch specific players and take things out of it. So, not unwatchable for me.
Well, like I said, we're going to torture ourselves regardless of what they do anyway. But for some, I can understand the sentiment. But just in general, rough game today. Also, doesn't help that you didn't have your captain. Pasternak's point streak comes to an end. Naos just mentioning that in the chat as well. What was it? 17 games total. Rough to see that come to an end, but it was going to happen at some point. Kid's still playing, and he had a hell of a game today. So,
yes, he did. Although, according to our friends at Bench Rates, the best skaters today were Waterspoon, Mitchell, Carlo, and Zadorov.
Interesting.
It's like Moneyball.
Yeah. You mentioned Ian Mitchell. So I mentioned earlier not too long ago, a couple call-ups, couple send-downs. You saw Callahan get sent down. We saw Tufte got sent down, and Wahlstrom got waived and then sent down. Wahlstrom got waived and then sent down. And then Merkulov, who we were just talking about, got called up. We saw VL get called up and Ian Mitchell get called up. What do you take out of what you've seen from Ian Mitchell versus Michael Callahan? Why do you think they made that move?
Again, quite simply to me, the reason they made the move is that with Callahan in the lineup, they have one puck-moving defenseman in Mason Lohrei. Occasionally, Nikita Zadorov does it. Ian Mitchell is a puck-moving defenseman. Michael Callahan is not. Brandon Carlo is not. Andrew Peak is not. And they needed another one. They needed something to try and create offense from the back end, and they wouldn't have got it with the 6 that they were putting out there. Yeah. That's that change to me.
And I think we've seen a little bit more offensive push in the last 2 games since we've seen Mitchell come up. I think we are starting to see some results. They're not fantastic results because, let's face it, Ian Mitchell's not. He doesn't move the puck as well as a Mason Lohrei or an NHL regular, but we are seeing positive offensive progression. So,
well, I don't know that it's positive. I didn't think it would make a difference, but it makes a difference in transition. Now, when you transition, you need your forwards to be able to score, and they just didn't. So, sending Callahan down was not a knock on Callahan. It's what was needed by this club.
Yeah, and I don't think he would have taken it the wrong way either. I think he
I don't think so either.
Understanding. Do you think anybody, because Kevin's now sitting here saying they need to sit Geeky Brazeau before something bad happens to them, too, because the trade deadline is close. So with the conversation of the trade deadline, I know I've seen somewhere the take that Georgi Merkulov was brought up for a showcase.
Well, hold on. Before we get into that, do you want to finish off on the Merkulov and Vial call-ups?
Sure.
Or do you just want to jump into it?
No, I jump around. We can backtrack a little bit and finish up. What have been your thoughts on Vial since he's been called up?
Well, with Wallstrom down, they needed somebody who could provide offense, and you had two choices in Providence: Vinny Lettieri, who already got his shot, or Georgi Merkulov. And I think the Bruins saw in Merkulov what I had said for a few weeks, that Georgi Merkulov was at his best in the AHL when Matthew Poitras was sent down, and the two were great together, and it kind of showed that that's what they were thinking was when they started Merkulov on Poitras's wing. Normally, you wouldn't have the Bruins playing two kids together like that.
Yeah,
But-
and Riley Tofty just scored an empty net goal to put the game away for Providence.
So that's the thinking there. So with that happening, somebody had to move up. I believe yesterday it was Kepke.
Yes.
Yesterday and today. So they needed somebody to play on the fourth line with some sandpaper, and it was Jeffrey Vial.
And I think Vial goes a little under the radar. I mean, he's been putting up points for Providence, not at an outrageously good pace, but if he's going to be on your fourth line up in Boston, at least there's that opportunity for him to put the puck in the net or contribute offensively. So the call up made perfect sense to me, especially once you knew Frederick was going to be out for a little while. Merkulov made it a great piece next to Poitras, as you mentioned, complimented him great down in Providence. And so then it becomes, what are you going to do on the right side of the third line? I don't see Brazeau being a fit there. Brazeau, we're going to come back to him in a minute, but I like the idea of moving up, whether it's a Kepke or Mark Kostelic would have made a lot of sense, which is, I think, what they did today. So it just, like you said, it opens up a spot on the fourth line, and it is what it is. So we'll come back to Justin Brazeau, though. As I mentioned, Kevin, he's just making sure we finish one topic before we go on to another. He's fine.
I don't recall me yelling, though.
I don't think so either. But anyway, Kevin mentions Geeky, Brazeau, the trade deadline's coming up. As I mentioned, somewhere I saw the take that Georgi Merkulov was brought up for a showcase at the NHL level to potentially be moved as a trade piece. Obviously, there's a lot of questions around Trent Frederick because of his injury. I mean, I don't think our position is overall changed as far as what they should do at the trade deadline. But do you think, one, Merkulov is being showcased, and two, Frederick's trade value, how much has that changed? I don't think it's changed a whole heck of a lot. It wasn't very high to begin with, so I don't really know that it was going to drop all that much. But what do you think of that injury maybe affecting what they could get for Trent Frederick?
Well, which one do you want me to tackle first?
Your pick.
Let's start with the showcase. The NHL hasn't showcased in years, probably since the salary cap came into effect. Scouting departments are so good now that every team has a book on every player. If an NHL team does not know what Georgi Merkulov brings after 2 years in the American Hockey League, they need a new scouting department.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Hey, I didn't say I agreed with the take. All I saw is I saw it somewhere.
I didn't see it, so I'm just giving you my opinion. You asked for it. Yeah, back before the salary cap, when you didn't have to worry about roster spots and all that, you saw a lot of showcasing. Now, in terms of Trent Frederick, I don't think his value's gone down. You know, there's at least one player a year acquired that's injured on every trade deadline or leading up to the Bruins did their own with Patrick Maroon.
Yeah.
I everybody knows what Trent Frederick is around the NHL. Everybody knows what he's capable of being. It's up to them to decide, can they get it out of him. I don't think it affects his value whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you were going to get a whole heck of a lot for him to begin with. So, let's see. Michael says just a nothing boring hockey game. Poitras, Carlo, just no one stood out. Is anybody standing out to you other than the obvious and David Pastrnak as far as whether they should be being potentially shopped? Teams inquiring about them. Anybody's play dictating how you would maybe change the approach on that player for the deadline?
No. I mean, if teams are calling, I'm going to listen about any player they want to talk about, whether it's David Pastrnak, Jeremy Swayman, or Parker Watersmith. That's my job as a general manager, to listen. I don't know that the play of any particular player has changed my opinion on what they should do with them. You asked me a couple of shows ago, or somebody in the chat asked us, who are the 5 players we would keep? We were in agreement. Jeremy Swayman, Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, David Pastrnak, and who was the other one? Was another defenseman.
I believe we said McAvoy, Lindholm, McAvoy, Lindholm. I think it was Lohrei.
Lohrei, yeah.
Pastrnak and
and Swayman. So, I mean, really, I'm listening on any of the forwards. I really am. Since McAvoy's been out, and I mean, you can go back to a year ago when the Noah Hannafin rumors were going around and everything. I said, I'm not trading Mason Lohrei for Noah Hannafin. I'm not. Absolutely not.
I remember that 1,000%. We had that conversation a lot.
Yeah. And we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg with Mason Lohrei. I truly, firmly believe that. And what we're seeing since McAvoy's been out is a Lohrei who is thriving with the extra ice time, who is making the power play better, who is gaining more and more confidence as each game goes on. And I hope they ride him, and they ride him hard like this till the end of the year, and let that kid gain the confidence, because I firmly believe he's going to be a stud. Not there yet, but he will be.
I think we can agree that right now, having Mason Lohrei in your top 4 is not where you want him to be for a cup contending team. Now, that being said, right now, we're also not a cup contending team, and we can get very quickly back there if a guy like Mason Lohrei can learn and bring his game up to the level that we know that it can be, or even to 85% of what his max capabilities are. So in a situation where we're in right now, a year that's kind of already gone to shit anyway, if you can get him 20 to 25 minutes a night, get him to see what does and what doesn't work. It was the Toronto game in overtime. He made the pinch, swung at the puck at the red line, at the blue line, causes the 2-1 going the other way. It wasn't the right play, but I'm okay with that this year. I don't want him making that mistake next year in the playoffs in Game 7. I want him to take the step back and play the right play then. I'm okay with him making that error this year.
And the thing about Mason Lohrei is he learns from his mistakes and he learns very quickly. He doesn't let him get. He's like a goaltender that way, a calm, cool, and collected goaltender. Doesn't let him bother him. Goes out there, and the very next shift, he's attempting to make plays
And
again.
did you see the play he attempted today?
But he rarely, yes, he rarely makes the same mistake twice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's what you want. If he was making the same mistake over and over and over and over again, he would be down in Providence, a la Fabian Lysell. That's why he's still down there. He's making the same mistakes over and over again. So Nao says, I like how Lohrei has looked with the more responsibility since Charlie's injury. Absolutely. With Charlie McAvoy down and Hampus Lindholm down, you are basically saying to Mason Lohrei, this defensive core is yours. Run with it. Let's see what you got. And I think you're doing a little bit of that with David Pastrnak too. You're kind of showcasing, like, without anybody else around, it's all on your shoulders. This is what you're going to have to do. And this is, how can you make other players better? I mean, he had 25 minutes of ice time today, practically. Pastrnak.
I didn't look at the ice time today.
So I know he had over 23 minutes and there was like 7 minutes left in the game and he was out there for a while. So it just, again, Pastrnak is still peaking. So, like, you give him the ice to do it this year too.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm open to trading anybody. You have to listen. If a GM calls, you have to listen. Back to Frederick. And you know this because I've sent you the conversations. So there was the rumor going around, first of all, about, I believe it was on TSN in Canada, said that the Leafs were looking to send a first-round pick and a top prospect, possibly Easton Cowan, to St. Louis for Braden Shen because they're looking for a third-line center.
Yep. I've heard that all a lot.
Yeah, so I contacted my buddy in St. Louis and asked him, and he said, did TSN also say that the Leafs would do that trade? Because we'd accept it, no questions asked, if they say yes. Yeah. In other words, bullshit. But that said, the Leafs are looking for a third-line center. Bruins have one in Charlie Coyle.
Yeah.
Would the Bruins deal Charlie Coyle to Toronto?
Well, I mean, what's the return? That's the big question there, huh? What's the return? I mean, I wouldn't be against it. What am I getting back? I'm not going to give him away to Toronto.
No, but it's not going to be a first-round draft pick in Easton Cowan.
No, God.
I can guarantee you that much. Braden Shen is not bringing in that much.
No, that's why if the phone call was made, who is it? Doug Armstrong in St. Louis should be fired the next minute if that trade is not put through. Yeah, he should be jumping on that one. Talk about an overpay. Like, as Kevin says, why not we dealt Kessel to the Leafs, exactly. So. But yeah, the Leafs, as Nails points out, they have some other interesting pieces down in the Marlies. I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just want to know what I'm getting back before, yes, I'm doing the deal, as anybody should. But I'm not against dealing Charlie Coyle. Hell, I'm not against dealing Brandon Carlo. I don't think you should do it during the season. And I know some people who are saying, Kevin, trade Brad Marchand. If you trade Brad Marchand, isn't Brandon Carlo kind of your next default captain almost? Like, isn't he the guy that brings the most leadership to the locker room at that point?
I would think so. Look, I think we're in agreement. Brad Marchand controls his destiny.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%.
And I've said it before. Charlie Coyle, you know, Brandon Carlo, those are the deals you make at the draft or before the draft, because the options, your options to trade them at this point are limited. But in the off season, you have 31 teams you can deal with, -8 for Carlo or for Coyle's no trade list.
Yeah, minus whatever their trade list includes.
I just think those types of deals with term on the contract, you are better off dealing them in the off season when you can speak to more teams. Like, why would San Jose be interested in Charlie Coyle at this time of year? They're not. In the summer might be a different story.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Brandon says, what about Coyle for Fraser Mitten? I mean, if I'm Boston, I jump over that.
Yep.
I don't think Toronto does it, though.
If Toronto's offering Minton or Easton Cowan, I'm jumping all over. You know what? What's his name? GM in Toronto.
Brett
Living. Brad, keep your first round pick. Just give me one of the two.
Yeah, 100%. I would take it and run.
Yeah.
You're not getting that for Coyle because they're not looking to give those up. They have 3 major trade chips: Minton, Fraser, and next year's first-round draft pick. You are more likely to get their first-round draft pick next year for Charlie Coyle than either Fraser Minton or Easton Cowan.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, I don't know if I would take the first-round pick for Coyle. I would try and get another pick in there with him, but I wouldn't dismiss it entirely. So I just don't know if Charlie Coyle's the missing piece for Toronto. I think they need a little bit more than one third-line center.
So let's go back before we get to Kevin's comment. Actually, let's finish Kevin's comment because it's still to do with Coyle. And then we'll get back to Frederick.
Yeah, Kevin says, if I could get a third for Coyle, I'd take it and run. Kevin, you are
you could
way
do better
underselling
than a third.
more. Yeah, I think you're way underselling.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, if you're offered a third for Trent Frederick, that might be the best that you're able to get, again, depending on the team offering it to him. What I would do is I would look at teams with multiple second-round picks. I would try to get a second-round pick. Honestly, if it's me, I'd call up Washington and just say, hey, I'll take my second-round pick back, and you can have Trent Frederick. It opens the door for a decent offer sheet in the summer. If someone becomes available, you have your second-round pick to do it, and you get an asset back for Trent Frederick. They get a third-line center, someone who can play the wing, and they get to go on their cup run with Trent Frederick. It's a reasonable deal for both sides.
Nice to see Mr. Tenkrat finally back in the chat.
Welcome back.
Frederick. Let's. So St. Louis plays tonight, right?
I believe so. Yes.
They're 1 point out of a wild card.
That sounds about right.
I believe so. I never got to see the rumor. I've heard about it. I don't know that it was more than a reporter, namely Fluto, throwing some options out there rather than it being an actual rumor. But Trent Frederick to St. Louis for who was it?
I believe it was Jeff Neighbors.
Yes, Jeff Neighbors.
Now, yes, Shaz points out that St. Louis is playing Dallas right now, and I just checked. They are losing 2-1. So they are 1 point behind Vancouver in the wild card spot, 2 slots behind because they got to overtake Calgary, who has the games in hand there.
Right. I think 2 games in hand, right?
Yes. So,
but here's the thing. What I can tell you is Jim Montgomery is very interested in having Trent Frederick on the team for obvious reasons. Trent Frederick had his best years under Jim Montgomery in Boston. um, I can tell you that the Blues will not be offering what other teams can offer because they feel that they have a legitimate shot at him come July 1st.
Yeah. 100%.
So they're not going to expend a lot of assets or valuable assets just to get the contract done a couple of months earlier. So they feel if he goes to free agency, they can make a run and they probably win the bidding.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know the rumor that you're talking about. I don't remember exactly where I saw it. I think it was a combination of two that some people have just somehow mushed together in the sense that the St. Louis Blues are interested in Trent Frederick, and then St. Louis Blues are willing to part with Jake Neighbors in a deal this year. And somehow, some way, fans somewhere went, "Oh, Neighbors for Frederick."
I thought he mentioned it in an article on the Athletic.
He might have, and that might be where it came from. But my understanding was they made it known they're willing to part with Neighbors in a deal. So, I mean, if you get Frederick for Neighbors, if you're Boston, that's you do that quicker than Toronto than St. Louis does Cowan for Shen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you're praying he realizes he said the wrong name. Like, that's just, I mean, you're talking about a 22-year-old left shot left wing with 3 years of 2 years after this year of control. I'd be all over that. I also wouldn't be surprised if he's at least asking about it, going, "We'll give you Frederick, and what else would you be interested in?" And then they would come back with Matthew Poitras, and that's when I hang up the phone.
Yeah, and just to answer Kevin's question there about Freddie, yeah, he was in a boot for only a day. He was out of the boot the very next day.
Yeah, it was after the game, and then 24 hours, and then it's as Shaz points out, someone noted, he's been out of the boot for a couple of days now. Hell, you probably see him back in the lineup in their next game.
Oh, I doubt it.
You think so?
I think at this point they got to keep him out until trade deadline.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's Thursday against the Hurricane. Yeah, he's probably sitting. You don't want to risk making anything worse.
Yeah.
But still, again, I don't think it trades his. I don't think it changes his trade value all that much. So it. I wouldn't shut out doing a deal with St. Louis, but if I'm St. Louis, I'm not looking to overpay.
No.
And they don't have a lot of draft capital this year. They don't have a draft pick in second, third, or fourth round. And if I'm St. Louis, I'm not offering my first round pick for Trent Frederick, a guy I can go sign in the offseason.
Absolutely.
So, I think Florida might sniff around as well. Obviously, they just made a big deal bringing in Seth Jones, sending out Spencer Knight to Chicago.
And word is that Kachuk will be out to the playoffs, so they got a lot of LTIR money.
Yeah, I think they're going to pursue some more purchases at the deadline, but they don't have a lot of assets to buy with. So that's the part that's going to be interesting to me. They're running low on draft capital, and I mean they probably have some prospects that I'm not sure how high people are on, but let's see. Jay Crow says Fluto did mention Freddie for Neighbors. I didn't see the exact article, so I don't know exactly what context it was mentioned in, but let's see. Kevin says keep him, Freddie, out of the lineup as long with a couple others if possible. Mr. Tenkrat says that the Neighbors' shooting percentage scares him a bit. He might take a dip, but that's definitely a win for Freddie. Yeah. Wait. I don't see that being enough, but I do think he mentioned it as a starting point. Oh, as someone that they would target to get back in a Frederick trade. It would really depend on how out of favor Neighbors has fallen. I think you can get a better piece for just Trent Frederick. Well, not a better piece, but a 1-for-1 for just Trent Frederick that is actually more reasonable. I just don't know if Neighbors fits the kind of deal that that Sweeney described. Someone that can help you this year and going forward. So I don't rule it out. I just don't know what it's going to cost to get a 23-year-old left shot, left wing who's got a great shooting percentage. As Mr. Tenkrat says, it's almost 19%, but he's got control. So,
you know who's a free agent this summer and is looking to come back to North America? Oscar Steen.
I'm not sure if Boston sniffs around on that one again. What do you think?
I don't think so. I think they've got to, at minimum, move on from Trent Frederick and Justin Brazeau at this trade deadline.
What is Justin Brazeau's trade value, though?
It doesn't matter. At this point, you go back to last week when I was talking about him with Matt Poitras. And at the time I said I counted 3 opportunities in the second period alone where Matt Poitras put a puck for Brazeau in front of the net, and Brazeau missed it all 3 times. I went back and rewatched the game, and there was 7 times in the whole game.
Oh,
give some guys to Matt Poitras who can finish, because he's a playmaker. Matt Poitras is not a goal scorer. Okay, so even if you move Brazeau for a 7th, that's something, because you're not re-signing him in the offseason. So get rid of him now. Get rid of Frederick now. And then in the offseason, you look to see what you can do with Coyle and Carlo and Korpisalo and anybody else you have.
I agree with that. I'm just saying I don't know what you're going to get for an offer on Justin Brazeau. Some team may look like
anything.
I would
even future.
I was going to say I'd call Edmonton and say I'll take future considerations for him. I would do that. I'm agreeing with you on that. I just don't know if anybody's going to say, yeah, sure, we'll do that deal. Because, I mean, how many teams can look at him and just go, we'll just wait for you to put him on waivers. Put him on waivers. I dare you.
But there's no need to put him on waivers. And future considerations is nothing. You're giving them away.
Yeah.
It's better than waivers because it saves them the $125 transfer fee.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, it's better to trade for future considerations than to wait for waivers.
Fair enough. Let's see. Best of luck to Quadzilla. Michael says, I'm pretty sure he signed a 6-year deal in Sweden with an opt-out maybe. HD has a question. Could the Bruins trade Carlo or Geeky to the Jets? The Jets have been an interesting one because they have a hard time getting free agents to sign there sometimes. He follows it up with Bruins could look at getting Lambert and a 2025 first. I don't know if Carlo's enough for that.
I don't think he's enough for that. And I don't know that Winnipeg is not on Charlie Coyle's no trade list.
Winnipeg appears on a lot of no trade lists. Now, could they use a Morgan Geeky? Sure, but Geeky is not going to get you the first and Lambert.
No.
And I mean, I agree with you. If someone's willing to overpay for Geeky, fine. And we don't really know where they're at in contract negotiations, but given the fact that he's an RFA and you have team control and you can sign him to an offer, or you can do an offer sheet on him, I don't know why you'd be willing to give up on him unless someone overpays for him. That's where I'm at with him. Michael has this comment, and I've been meaning to get around to it. He says Poitras has done nothing the last 3 games to show his worth. That I believe was a follow-up. There was another comment about Matthew Poitras, kind of questioning what he's bringing to the team right now. I think you hit the nail on the head. You got to get him some guys who can score.
Yeah, look yesterday when after Marchand went down, and then he got to play shifts with Pasternak.
Mm-hmm.
They were buzzing. That trio was buzzing, and it wasn't just Pasternak that was creating. It's you got to understand for a guy that is a playmaker and has the skills to be an elite playmaker in this league, you can't bunker him down with Trent Frederick and Justin Brazeau.
Yeah. And you know who else played well next to Matthew Poitras too? Morgan Geekie. Geekie played well next to him too. So if you're going to be looking at a second or third line that has Morgan Geekie on it, I mean, Zaka's a different question, and that's a whole other conversation, but I wouldn't mind seeing Geekie, Poitras, Pasternak at some point.
It doesn't matter. That's what Poitras is.
That's what I mean. I wouldn't mind seeing those 3 together, though.
Unless you're putting him with guys that can finish, what you see is what you're going to get. A guy's skills being wasted.
Yeah, Kevin says Poitras, Geekie if he doesn't move, and Pasta fun line in 2 years if Geekie continued this progression. Absolutely. Even where they're at right now. Killer Beast says some team will take Brazeau. Nyquist was just traded for a 2nd-round pick, and he has just 1 more point than Brazeau in the season. It's not all about points, though. It's not all about points. Brazeau can't. He's not. He hasn't developed his skating the way that he needed to, and he still gets beat on the board from smaller guys. Big giant slow forward for the playoffs. The team might toss a 7th for Brazeau, and that's fair. I would take that absolutely. Mr. Tenkrat says a first for Geekie. I drive him to the airport. It depends on what team is offering the first, really, or what team's first you're getting. Let me reword it that way. Yes, Poitras needs finishers. Let's see. We saw Poitras and Pasta again today, so the staff see it. I think some of that, though, also played a role with the fact that Marchand is out. Those are guys that you're going to double shift and see what they can offer you. So,
I think too it was the line juggling that Sacco tried in the third. Here's the thing: is it on Sacco for giving him the line mates that he's forced to play with, or is it on Sweeney for not providing them?
Would you see? I mentioned this line to you a number of weeks ago, probably a few months back. Zacha, Poitras, Pasternak.
No.
Exactly.
Yeah. I told you yesterday or the day before on Twitter or on X, I posted it. The line I want to see after trade deadline is Georgi Merkulov, Matthew Poitras, Fabian Lysell. Let them sink or swim, because right now you have to know what you have in those guys before you go to the off season.
Oh, agree. Absolutely. No, but what I'm saying, you to your point about is it on Sacco or is it on Sweeney for who Poitras has to play with? Like, what else are you going to do for Matthew Poitras other than try him with Marchand, Pasternak? Like, we've seen him with Coyle. We've seen him with Lindholm. Not really so much as Lindholm. But we've seen him with some of these other guys, and he was fine. But the other guys, the rest of the lineup wasn't in sync when you were doing that.
I'll tell you whose fault it is. It's Don Sweeney's fault. Because Matthew Poitras, even though he will be one day, But right now, he is not a second line center, and he is definitely not a first line center.
Mhm.
He's a third line center. So to play to his strengths, he needs to be on the third line with guys that can finish.
Yeah, like I said, he was doing.
Not with Justin Brazeau. Justin Brazeau couldn't get his stick on easy pucks that Matthew Poitras sent to him. Trent Frederick, while his best games have been with Matthew Poitras, just wasn't finishing.
One of the best lines that you saw was when you had, well, with Matthew Poitras at the middle, was when you had Morgan Geekie on the left and Trent Frederick on the right, because Geekie was able to finish and Frederick was able to keep his feet going, and he played the game the way he should. But then you move Geekie up, you move Frederick back over, and then you have Brazeau on the right. So it's a trickle down effect of problems throughout the lineup. Not to say that Brazil or
which falls on management, not
yeah,
coaching.
no, absolutely.
You can't weaken the top line to move Geekie down with Poitras because that works better for Poitras. Because you now just weaken the top line.
You needed to go as management, go out and get that winger to play on the top line.
The option for this team, I'm telling you, Chris, there's only one option. It's Georgian Mikulov, Matt Poitras, and Fabian Lysell. Because before they go off, spend an 8-year, $62 million deal on a free agent, don't you think you should know whether you have the answer in-house before you go do that?
100% in agreement with you on that.
Okay. So, then tell me how you don't agree with the Merkulov, Poitras, Lysell.
I agree with it.
And letting them
going
sink
forward the rest of the season,
no,
I agree
not.
with it. I'm talking about how we got to this point.
How we got to this point is irrelevant. How we got to this point is management didn't provide the coaching staff with a roster he can use.
Yeah, and Michael says it feels like a combination of players management, and coaches, which isn't wrong.
Players underachieved, definitely. Team wasn't ready coming out of training camp, definitely.
But is that part?
So that's on the players and the coaches. I was going to say
that's on the players and the coaches. 100%.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where was HD asks, what does Carlo fetch? Now we've talked about that being a move you make in the offseason. Would you consider doing it at the deadline at all?
Of course I would if an offer knocked me off my feet. But I'm careful because I know I can get a better offer in the summertime.
I think you get a better offer in the summer too. I do.
At the draft.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I wait. I think you can get a couple decent pieces for him, though. Again, depending on who's looking at him. And, he will be a decent piece for a lot of teams. If you can talk to all 31 other teams, minus whatever's on his trade list, you can get a lot more back for him.
Yeah. Any player with term on their deal, you will always get more for them approaching the draft than you will at trade deadline.
Albin says, I saw the Jets are shopping Colby Barlow. Can that be an option in a Geekie deal? Geekie is from Manitoba, and it might be easier for them to have him sign there.
If the Jets are giving me Colby Barlow for Morgan Geekie, I'm jumping all over
it. Sorry, something just fell off my desk. I'm trying to figure out what it was. So, yeah, I mean, there are certain deals that you just take right off the bat. Let's see. If you can snag 2 firsts for this draft and package them together with your own to get into the top 5 and snag a blue chip center, I'm all in LFG, says Kevin. Kevin, real quick.
I don't think they even have to get top 5, Kevin. I think if they can get into the top 8, and they might be able to do that. Just think yesterday, if they had lost to Pittsburgh yesterday, they were picking 10th.
Yeah, I think they'll be all right in a draft position with their own draft pick as is. That
Yeah.
being said, as we've seen before, having multiple first-round picks is irrelevant, even if you want to trade up, because you have to have a team that's willing to make that trade. So
Yeah, I think this year, for me, unquestionably, Matthew Schaefer is the number one pick. He's a defenseman. 3 of the next 4 are centers. Okay, you got Hagens, you got Misa, you've got Frondell from Sweden, and then you got Porter Martone, a winger from the OHL. I think that, and they're so evenly matched, but I think you could take those 4 in any order with the next 4 picks.
now,
So you might get the second team looking, okay, we need a winger, and we're pretty sure Misa's going to be the next one to go. So we'll move down and trade down to the 4th spot, grab an extra asset, and Martone should be there in the 4th spot or the 5th spot.
but you have to have, if Boston right now, based on points percentage, they would have it looks like about the 12th pick. So to your point, that loss to Pittsburgh, or the victory over Pittsburgh, is crucial. You have to have that pick to be able to make that deal, though. They're not going to go, well, we like this winger, we're willing to go from 3 to 5. If you don't have the 5th round pick.
Obviously.
So that's where you need to plan out what you have. And to your point, Kevin, if you have your pick at, let's say you drop a little bit and you have the 9th pick, and then you end up with a second first round pick that's 16th. 9 and 16 isn't going to bump you into the top 6. Like, unless someone's really off the draft board and they know they can get their guy at 9. So Mr. Tankrat says, who's making these picks?
Here's the confusing thing. Since Don Sweeney has, forget 2015, forget 2016. Since 2017, when Don Sweeney started revamping the scouting department, they've done pretty well. I will tell you what. Any name that Bob Weddick brings to the table to Don Sweeney on the draft floor, that's who they should be picking. To me, Bob Weddick should be the next director of scouting for the Boston Bruins.
I mean, like you said, ever since they started focusing on rebuilding the scouting staff, their drafting has been fine. I don't think people give them enough credit for what they've been able to do in that scouting staff or in that scouting department. And some of it we're going to see over the next couple of years as you see some of the waves of guys come in. I mean, think about it. Mason Lohrei was 58th overall, and he was a recently converted winger. So I'll take that. He's less than 100 NHL games right now.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Where was... Oh, Nikki said back here, trade Carlo, Coyle, Freddie. Only trade bait for something good back. Oh, no, it was this one here. JD said, it's on Sweeney. We've known for months this team needs offensive help. I mean, wasn't it Sweeney?
In his own words.
Say, wasn't he the one who said we needed a
said,
winger coming into the year?
He said this roster is not complete.
Yeah.
As is.
Right.
He knew it. But what has he done to do anything about it? Look, we can trade whoever we want that is under contract. Charlie Coyle, Brandon Carlo, you could Hampus Lindholm, Nikita Zadorov. You are not going to get full value for them at trade deadline. You're just not going to.
Yeah.
The guys that are going to bring in more are the UFAs to a true contending team.
Yeah. It just, yeah, because they're going to want the flexibility to figure it out in the offseason. It just doesn't.
Right.
And to your point, he knew that this was an incomplete team. He's been, as a general manager, you have to look at the team day in and day out, and he knew this team wasn't offensively put together the way that it should have been. But then the team comes out and they come off to a crappy start. They're sluggish in the beginning. The start was garbage after training camp. It is what it is. So now he's trying to figure out, is it this player? Is it that player? They're trying to figure out what options they have. Now, I guarantee you, during his calls and his research for the Four Nations Canadian roster, which did win, by the way, let's not forget, he assembled the team that won for that tournament. He was also able to assess what other teams were thinking on their players. The conversations were going to happen at the same time. So he knows who's interested in doing what with who and has a great pulse. That's one thing that we know Sweeney does, is he has a great pulse on what's going on around the league with other players and other teams. So now it's just a matter of making sure that you don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Making a trade of a Brandon Carlo at the trade deadline when you could have gotten more for him in the offseason. It's making the right move at the right time. And of course, the team has continued to sputter and yet still remain competitive. So he's had to try to figure out, am I going to try to add or not? And then now last week we kind of got the waving of the white flag, if you will. So HD says Boston would have to lose a decent chunk of games if they want any sort of significant piece in the draft. Sure, 10 to 12 is good, but it's nothing near a top 5 pick. Can they still get a decent pick at 12?
I don't know. I don't have my draft file open. Hold on.
Well, just as a ballpark, you're still going to get a decent piece at 10 to 12. Are you going to get a James Higgins? No.
Yeah.
But still.
No. Would you stop with James Higgins? Are you going to get a Matthew Schaefer? No.
Besides, Higgins is going back to college for another season.
You're going to get. Look, there's no generational talent in this draft. In other words, there's no Connor McDavid. There is no Sidney Crosby. There is no Austin Matthews. There are franchise players. Schaefer's a franchise player. Higgins is a franchise player. Misa is a franchise player. He's about as close to generational as you will get. Remember, he had exceptional status in the OHL. Just a little stat on him. January 1st, 2021 or 2025, he had a 9-point lead over Porter Martone in the scoring race, the OHL scoring race. March 1st, so 9 points. Mm-hmm. March 1st, he had a 29-point lead.
So in 2 months, 20 points.
Yeah. On January 1st, he had
that's outrageous though.
Outrageous is right. I believe it was January 1st. He had a 9-goal lead over Martone. Sorry, a 6-goal lead over Martone, and had played 6 more games. Yeah, 9 goals, had played 6 more games. On March 1st, he had, are you ready for this?
Oh, God. Lay it on us.
A 26 goal lead in the scoring race.
Wow.
In basically 2 months. He went from a 9 goal lead, having played 6 more games, to 26 goal lead.
That's a player right there.
Yeah.
But James Higgins is going number one.
Higgins is not.
Higgins is
Matthew
not going number
Schaefer-
one.
Matthew Schaefer is going number one. Still a 17-year-old defenseman. He's only played maybe 15 games this year and is still in the top 10 scoring among draft eligible defensemen.
Yikes. The other thing that you have to look at too is who's in line ahead of you to make those picks. That's going to play a big role in this draft as well, because if you've got Buffalo ahead of you, Buffalo's one of the teams that's most likely willing to trade out because they already have a bunch of young players that they have to sort out and figure out what the hell they're going to do with. So that's a team that you could try and target with a veteran player like a Brandon Carlo to help their defense, and then something if he's not on their trade list, of course. So let's see. Mr. Tencrat says that he's agreeing with you that Sweeney's drafting has been not as bad as it seems. Laura and Patra were both good recent hits. He's been at it for 10 years now with 4 different coaches, though. When does the time run out for Sweeney? Because I know a lot of people are calling for that job.
I think this is his last kick at the can. This is his last contract, unless he turns things around in the offseason. My opinion.
I mean, he will have, at least for next year, the ability to look at Neely and ownership. I think it's more an ownership thing, because if they move on from Sweeney, they'll probably move on from Neely too. But he still has the ability to look at it and go, look at the teams that I put together the last 2 years that my coaching staff blew. And I wanted to keep Butch around. I was forced to move on, and this guy screwed it up. That wasn't his call, and I think he'll continue to throw that back at him until at least one more season that's a valid claim for. So Michael says, do you think it's advantageous to deal earlier in the week or later in the week, as the deadline is on Friday? Asking because deals are starting to take place. Well, Michael, deals have been taking place for months. Let's not forget Mikko Rantanen, the 2 deals that Colorado made to replace their goaltending. Deals have been going on for months. It's just a matter of what makes the most sense. But what do you think, Dom? Do you think for Boston, waiting is going to be better?
It depends. It's depends on the team that's shopping. Let's say you have Washington and Winnipeg going after the same player, and one of them loses out, and you have a player that matches the player that they were after. You've now got them over a barrel, can make them pay more. On the flip side, if you wait, everybody may finish what they're looking to do, and you're left holding the bag.
Yeah. The perfect time to make a deal is when it's the best deal that you think you can get. So let's see. JD says, I blame the players for not being ready for training camp. Too many weddings, too much partying, not enough off-season training, caught up to them. I mean, you can't really fault someone for going to a wedding, but definitely could have done a little bit more training in the off-season. Let's see.
They weren't ready.
No, they weren't.
They just weren't ready.
Kevin says, if the Bruins get multiple firsts this draft, you know the Sweeney haters will be out in full force saying he's going to blow it again. Absolutely. But, I mean, let's not forget, though, overall, when Sweeney went into that rebuild, he did a good job with that rebuild. He got good pieces. Now, the draft, the scouting staff, that did not help the situation. But I mean, you go into a draft with 3 first-round picks. That's pretty good pre-prep work to get to that point. So, Michael says maybe the Bruins can bring back Pavel Shen. Let's see. What do you think about Roger McQueen? HD says, hey, go ahead.
I don't think McQueen's a top 10 pick.
Okay. HD says Higgins and Schaefer will be 1-2 regardless of any order. I think Misa could be a really, really good pick, a steal if he drops below 4. Michael, go ahead.
I don't think anybody is taking Higgins before Misa. That's my even Bob McKenzie's consensus, and this is coming from directors of NHL scouting, 10 teams. All say Higgins is going before, or Misa is going before Higgins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Higgins is a solid, great prospect, and he's playing very, very well in his first year in the NCAA. But
his start of the season screwed him.
I was just saying,
he did not get off to a good start.
He didn't start well, and he's still it's not the same development path. He's still going to be at least maybe 2 years away. You're really going to have to see what he does next season to know how far out he is. You're not jumping him into the NHL or even your AHL system next season. The other guys, you have a shot at least having them make the jump. So Tankathon has us taking Jackson Smith,
who's Tankathon?
Tankathon is a website that gives you it basically tells you how well you're doing at throwing the season away. Yeah, it's much more useful for the NFL when the draft order is based on standings. So let's not forget that we still have to go through the lottery. So Michael has a good point, though. I could see the Habs make a push for Rantanen. That would be interesting. Certainly wouldn't help you in the division. The division's still going to be tough. So there's a lot of teams that are going to push for Mikko Rantanen, though. Hell, if I'm Boston, I would make a push for him. Imagine him on the opposite side of a Pastrnak.
Where's what?
I don't know.
Pastrnak?
No, that's what I'm saying. Mikko Rantanen on one side, Pastrnak on the other. I don't care. Throw Poitras in the middle. You got nothing else on the team, but at least you got that for a first line. Curious as to who you think the Bruins' next coach will be. I don't see Sacco being the guy that comes in from Shaz. I know we've had a couple conversations about the coaching staff. I mean, got to feel bad for Sacco. This crap is not what you hope to give a guy his first crack in over a decade for, but I mean, you got to see who's available. You got to wait. It's tough to say.
Exactly.
I mean, unless there's somebody on your radar that I'm not thinking of, I don't think anybody's really stepping up saying I'm going to be available. So you just pulled this one up. Brendan says Jake O'Brien is the pick and realistic for 10-12 draft range. Kid is a stud. Smoke Robert Thomas's rookie scoring record. By the way, Brandon Carlo's value is being vastly overrated by us. He's a good bottom pairing D. He's not a legit top 4 stud.
I'll take
or
this.
You'd be getting first round pick and top prospect. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll agree on Jake O'Brien, and I'll disagree that we're vastly overrating Brandon Carlo's value, because we never gave a value on Brandon Carlo. All we've been saying is you will get more for him in the offseason than you will at trade deadline. That's not overrating him. That's a fact.
He's also
when you have 31 teams bidding on him, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3, value automatically goes up. But nobody's overvaluing him here.
No, and to say he's not a top 4, I mean, he's a shutdown defenseman that many around the league regard as one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league. He's had an off year overall. The entire team has, but we saw yesterday what he can look like in a good game for him. So is he going to put up crazy statistics and whatnot? No, he's going to be a shutdown guy. He's closer to Jacob Slavin than he is Cale Makar. It is what it is, but you need guys like him on your team. So let's see. Assuming some roster spots are opened up after the trade deadline, I'd like to see what Sweeney can do with some of the upcoming college FAs. I was going to save that topic for tomorrow's prospect show.
Well, they're not prospects.
True.
Right? They don't belong to the Bruins. So
fair enough.
Yeah, there's definitely guys that they're going to be attracted to. Dalton Bancroft, Gleb Beremiev, talked about him a lot on our shows. Who else? Albin Boya. Remember that name?
Yep.
Goaltender at the University of Maine.
And they're going to need to pick up a goaltender because their pool there is not big at all.
Yeah. TJ Hughes may be the best of the bunch. So, they'll be looking.
Yeah. There was another name. He's at Quinnipiac too. I'm trying to remember he's on the line with drawing a blank on the name here. Sorry. I mentioned him to you last week. And now I'm blanking complete. I think he's on the line with Pelosi, yeah. Let me pull up Quinnipiac's roster. I'll know the name as soon as I see it. But yeah, he's not drafted or signed by anyone here or anything like that. So, there'll be some college free agents that they're looking at.
Yes, Michael. Dalton Bancroft, free agent. Somebody the Bruins might be interested in.
Brendan says, in reference to the Carlo comments, he would get you a second-round pick and a B-level prospect. No, he's not a legit shutdown D. Stop it. Slavin and him shouldn't be mentioned in the same sentence. He's Hal Gill 2.0. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He is a true shutdown defenseman, 100%, has been. There's a reason he made the team when he was 18. Brandon Carlo is undervalued by people who try to say that he's overvalued. I can't. I agree to disagree on that one, Brendan. Sorry. So Jack Ricketts, I think it was.
Yeah.
Ricketts was the
There's
other one.
There's a lot of them. There's a good class of free agents.
Just because he didn't make Team USA doesn't mean he's not a legit shutdown D. Team USA is not the end-all be-all as to who's a top shutdown defenseman in the National Hockey League. If you're going to only go off of who made a national roster for the Four Nations face-off, then you're limiting yourself to way too few a player pool. So, and yeah, Colton Parayko is also a legit shutdown D. Brandon Carlo and Colton Parayko are much more similar than people give them credit for. Do you want to go off on player comps?
No, I don't make them. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. That's his opinion. No, leave it at that.
That's why I said we'll agree to disagree. Michael says, I know this is tomorrow is the prospect show, but wants to know what's the future of Cole Spicer.
Michael, I'm honestly having a hard time getting a read on Spicer. He didn't play this weekend. I don't know that there's an injury, so I don't know what's going on. No idea where he's going to play next year yet either. So right now the book is open. It's just hard to get a read on it.
All right, so Sweeney questions won't be discussed. Got it. What was the question, MD? If I missed it, sorry. We've got quite a few flying in, so feel free to repost it. We're not skipping any on purpose, and I will go back and try and see some that I might have missed. Neo says a point here. Ask around other teams, fans, not just the fans, but the teams themselves, what they think of Carlo. He is well regarded. Absolutely. Let's see. I know there was a couple questions back here asking about player development. Right. Boston fan had one here. What's your thoughts about the development department for the Bruins? There was another one right before it, but basically, this must be the question MD's talking about. How does Sweeney get away with being non-existent for 95% of the season and still get to keep his job? He hasn't been non-existent.
Well, I disagree. And I
for 95% of the season?
It. Yeah.
All right. Then I'll let you take this one.
You talk to the media in September, and then you don't talk to them again until February.
GMs don't frequently talk to the media during the season, though.
That's bullshit. That's utter bullshit, Chris. GM's only talking to the media. Constantly.
Sweeney's not.
Sweeney is the only one who doesn't.
But that doesn't mean he's non-existent. He's non-existent to the media.
Fans need communication, and that comes from the general manager through the media.
No, the communication needs to be within the organization.
No.
They don't have to spew all their business to the public. They don't have to do that.
No,
we want them to.
No. Fuck, Chris. Nobody's saying all the business. But at least talk to the fans that are spending, to bring a family out, spending over $1,000 to go watch your friggin' product on the ice that you can't supply. And he refuses to address. He refuses to address the media. I wrote an article about Cam Neely coming out and talking about the trade deadline. Okay, and the very end of it, my last sentence was, and Don Sweeney has been non-existent. And I had members of the, and I had members. Chris, let me finish. I had members of the Bruins media contacting me and saying, good for you, Dom, because no GM in the NHL talks less to the fans, and that's through the media, than Don Sweeney. He refuses to address anything with this team. He will not come out and talk about injuries. He just nothing. Absolutely nothing. I can turn on TSN and I can find any general manager of any team talking to the media. Every fucking night I turn on TSN. There is a GM from team A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, Q, R. Oh, you forgot the P. Yeah, that's where Don Sweeney is. Talking to the media, to the fans, through the media. Any friggin' night I can find it. But where is Don Sweeney? Invisible. And don't tell me he's not, Chris.
Has he ever been visible? Has he ever been visible as a GM, or has this been his MO since day one?
No, he has always been visible. I remember in 2015, he was constantly in front of the screens, talking to fans about why they made this trade and why they made that trade. Constantly. He used to come out. He used to be the one that delivered the information about players' injuries. Ever since Bruce Cassidy has been left on the coaches.
I mean,
Don Sweeney
it's
has been. Don Sweeney deserves an F when it comes to communicating with the fans. An F.
sure.
If you
I
could
don't-
give a lower grade, I would.
I don't disagree with that, but that doesn't mean he's non-existent within the organization. Now, do we know? And I'm genuinely asking: do we know why, when it was with Bruce, Bruce took over the responsibilities of communicating some of that stuff?
Because Don Sweeney stopped talking to the media. Remember when Cam Neely used to go on the Sports Hub every weekend?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Okay, they're not when they go on these shows and they talk to the media. They're not talking to the media. They're talking to the fans.
I know. Again, he's been non-existent to the fans. I agree with you at 100%, but that doesn't mean he's been non-existent in his job within the office of the building.
It's an entertainment business. They need to communicate to the fans.
I agree with that, but the way I'm reading his question here is that he's not doing his job in the office. That's how I'm interpreting this question. And I'm saying you can't say that he's been non-existent in his role as a general manager for 95% of the season. To the fans, in the media, I'm with you on that 100%. I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I will also put this out there, though, for fans in the Boston area. You know who else was the same way with the media? Bill Belichick. And no one complained about it. They laughed about it because he won 6 Super Bowls.
In September, Don Sweeney said, this is not a complete roster.
Yep. I agree.
And what did he do since September? He brought in
He
Oliver
hasn't done
Wahlstrom.
enough. I agree. Well, he also brought in Tyler Johnson at that point as well. That was after those comments too. But again, I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying he's perfect. He's been screwing up. Absolutely, for sure. There's more he could be doing, but we act like, or fans act like he's not doing anything in his role.
Okay, well, we have clarified on his question, and that's the way I took it.
Yeah, he says, I meant invisible to us fans, which he absolutely has, yes. But that doesn't say anything about his job. And guess what? If ownership says...
But that's not what he was talking about.
Yes, it is. Because his question was, how does he get to keep his job? Just because he doesn't give fans an explanation doesn't mean ownership is going to put his job on the line because he's not talking to the media. As long as he meets the obligations that he has to based on the collective bargaining agreement, the ownership's not going to give a shit.
Chris, the question had nothing to do with whether he's doing his job.
His original question, I got to go back to it.
Okay, but he clarified it right here, what he meant, which is what I took it to mean. He has been invisible to the fans.
But the question is how does he still get to keep his job?
Okay, but you and I are taking it two different ways. You're taking it for not doing his job in the office, which he hasn't done anyway, and I'm taking it because he's being invisible to the fans.
But what I'm saying is taking your interpretation of he's been invisible to the fans, and ownership can look at it and go, don't care. That we don't pay him to talk to the media. We pay him to run our hockey team. That's how he gets to keep his job, because ownership is fine with what he's doing. That's it. And to your point that you said earlier, he gets a little bit more of a leash to fix things and turn things around. If he doesn't, then he sure as shit will be canned. Taz says that Sweeney was too busy with Team Canada. Dom is right. He did nothing to resolve the team's offensive issues. Taz, my counter to that would be if he was busy with Team Canada, having conversations, knowing what's going on around the league, that kind of prepares him for the trade deadline coming up. He has the knowledge that he needs from other teams. He's not frantically calling teams right now trying to figure things out. He already knows what's going on. Now, I think the waiving of Wahlstrom last week is going to start the dam of moves. It's going to open things up. We already saw 3 players get moved. When was the last time we saw 3 players get sent down and 3 get called up in one transaction or in one day? Other than training camp. I mean, you got to make the right combination of players. Anybody can make a roster for Team Canada, but it's a matter of picking the right ones. How many people were sitting here saying Jordan Binnington should be that team's starter? Fucking no one. And he's the reason why they won. A massive reason why they won in the end. So for all the people who were screaming Aiden Hill's name, they went into that tournament knowing it was going to be Jordan Binnington. Let's see. Matrix says, I tend to agree with Dom here. If your GM cannot communicate with the fans, then he's not doing the full scope of his GM duties. It depends on what's written in the agreement, between the collective bargaining agreement. If the collective bargaining agreement says that he has to do 3 media appearances a year, and that's all that's required of him, then that's all he has to do. Now, I agree with you. As a fan, I want him to say more. I want to have a better idea of what's going on. But if he's only required to do 3 media appearances in a season, then that is all you should expect.
There's nothing. There's the collective bargaining agreement doesn't cover management.
There's something. There's an agreement
coaches,
somewhere.
Chris. It
There's
covers
a contract
players.
somewhere. There's a contract somewhere that says what he has to do.
Not for GM, but you tell me if you're okay with 31 GMs in the league making at least a weekly comment about their squad, and your GM is the only one that doesn't, that you're satisfied with that.
If this team is in a playoff position right now, are we having this conversation?
I've been having this conversation for years.
Okay, are fans bringing it up? That's my point. Are fans complaining, where is Don Sweeney, if they're in a playoff spot? Constantly.
I
haven't heard. I sure as hell didn't hear it in 2023.
You are bringing up hypotheticals, Chris.
I didn't hear it in 2023. I didn't hear it in 2024. I didn't hear it in 2019.
Chris, there's a difference when you have the best record in the history of the NHL just 2 short years ago, and now you're on the verge of missing the playoffs. Yes, the fans want to hear from management now. Why? What happened? What are you going to do about it? Well, why would they want to ask him those questions 2 years ago in 2023?
All I'm saying is if we're in a playoff spot right now, yes, some people are probably still having that question.
That's when you raise the questions.
That's my point.
You don't raise these questions when things are going good. You don't raise these questions when things are going good. You raise these questions when things are going bad. You're going to ask Don Sweeney in 2023, why are you doing this? We're having such a great record.
People were still asking him questions. People still like
Chris.
My point. No. My point is, fans start losing their mind because of one bad season. I'm not saying you. I'm saying fans.
That's when you ask the questions.
But what I'm saying is, as fans start to lose their minds because of one bad season, all right? If, and I know, hypothetical here, but as you said, if he's able to turn it around going into next season, he keeps his job. If he doesn't, he loses his job. It's that plain and simple. Why does he get to keep his job? Because of the track record that he has of getting this team to two Stanley Cup finals. Because he put together the best roster in the history of the game. That's why he gets to keep his job. Whether he's in front of the microphone or not, he's done those things. He has earned a leash longer than one season that has seen a top two defenseman get knocked down for 95% of the season. A bad start that's put on the coaches and the players. That wasn't on Sweeney. The start was not on him. All right? And to get through another now crushing blow to your number one defenseman. He's earned a leash to get through those problems and try and turn it around. That's why he gets to keep his job, regardless of what he's communicating to the fans. I wish he was communicating more to the fans too. I am agreeing with you on all of that, but that's why he gets to keep his job, because of what he's done.
All right, it's after 8:00 and I have to go.
What a great way to end it, right?
Sorry, I had told you I told you I have to be finished by 8:00.
I know, and I'm just realizing the time too. I'm going to read through some of these comments so we can try and talk about them a little bit more tomorrow's show. We've got the prospects to go through. We have 30 highlights for tomorrow, roughly. Hopefully we get all 30 of them. It'll be same channel, 6:30, and we will have the Dom.Hockey, the podcast tomorrow. Dom, any final thoughts before we sign off for tonight?
Trade everybody.
Except Pasternak and Lohrei and that list of 5 that we gave you. A couple episodes ago, it's there. I know it's really rough to end it this way today, but go Bees.